Jake Morrison stood among the twisted metal and broken dreams that once formed Luna Colony 7. The silence was complete now, broken only by the hiss of escaping atmosphere through hull breaches that would never be repaired. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrians came, and the smell of death still lingered in the recycled air. 50,000 people had called this place home. 50,000 men, women, and children who woke up one morning expecting another ordinary day in humanity's most advanced research station. They never saw the alien ships until it was too late. The captain walked through the main corridor where families once strolled to the observation decks. Now the walls were scorched black and dark stains marked where bodies had fallen. The Zephyrians hadn't come to conquer or to steal resources. They came to send a message. They called it a demonstration of superiority, a warning to humanity about their proper place in the galaxy. The aliens had broadcast their intentions across every human communication channel, speaking in perfect English they had learned from intercepted transmissions. They wanted everyone to know this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate murder. Morrison touched the cold metal of a blast door that had been melted through like butter. Behind it, investigators had found a classroom full of children who had been learning about the stars. The teacher had tried to shield them with her own body. It hadn't mattered. The Zephyrian weapons had killed them all in seconds, leaving nothing but shadows burned into the walls. The captain closed his eyes and tried to push away the images, but they stayed with him like an infection that wouldn't heal. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood before the United Earth Council in a room that had once been decorated with symbols of peace and cooperation. Those symbols were gone now, replaced with star charts marking every known Zephyrian world and military installation. The faces around the table were hard and cold, transformed by grief into something humanity had never seen before. These weren't the same people who had spent decades reaching out to alien species with open hands and hopeful hearts. Those people had died with Luna Colony 7. Rodriguez placed her hands on the podium and looked into the cameras that would carry her words to every human world. Her voice was steady but carried an edge that cut through the silence like a blade. She spoke of the old policies, the diplomatic protocols that had governed human contact with alien species for over a century. Those policies were based on the assumption that other species were like humanity, capable of reason and compassion. Luna Colony 7 had proven that assumption wrong. The Admiral announced the implementation of Project Warpath. Every human world would be militarized. Every factory would be converted to weapons production. Every school would teach children how to fight alongside mathematics and literature. The age of human innocence was over. The galaxy had shown its true face, and humanity would show theirs in return. There would be no more attempts at peaceful contact. No more diplomatic missions. No more trusting alien words over alien actions. From this day forward, humanity would speak only in the language the galaxy understood: violence. Dr. Kevin Hayes worked 18 hours a day in the Phoenix Research Facility, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. His team had been studying pieces of destroyed Zephyrian ships for months, trying to understand technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The aliens used something called quantum disruption, a way of tearing holes in space itself to create weapons of incredible power. Hayes had watched recordings of their attacks on Luna Colony 7 over and over, analyzing how the alien weapons had cut through the station's defenses like they weren't even there. The breakthrough came when Hayes realized that human understanding of quantum mechanics was more advanced than the aliens suspected. Humans had been working with quantum theory for centuries, but they had always been careful, always worried about the dangers of manipulating reality at its most basic level. The Zephyrians had no such concerns. They used quantum disruption like a hammer, crude but effective. Hayes began to see ways to refine their methods, to create weapons that would make the alien technology look primitive by comparison. His first successful test had vaporized a target asteroid completely, leaving nothing but empty space where a mountain of rock had been moments before. The energy readings were beyond anything humans had achieved before. Hayes stared at the empty coordinates on his screen and felt a cold satisfaction. This was how humanity would answer the massacre at Luna Colony 7. This was how they would speak to the galaxy, in terms that even the Zephyrians would understand. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chen piloted her reconnaissance ship through the outer rim of human space, her sensors constantly scanning for signs of alien activity. What she found changed everything. The Zephyrians weren't just expanding their territory or looking for resources. They were systematically exterminating every intelligent species they encountered. Chen watched from the shadows as alien ships bombarded world after world, turning entire civilizations into burning wastelands in a matter of hours. She documented species that humanity had never met, races that had been reaching for the stars, just as humans once had. The Zephyrians showed them the same mercy they had shown Luna Colony 7. None. Chen realized that the massacre wasn't about teaching humanity a lesson or putting them in their place. It was about testing them. The aliens wanted to see how humans would respond to the murder of their people. They wanted to know if humanity would fight or submit. As Chen transmitted her findings back to Earth, she understood that her species was facing something worse than conquest. The Zephyrians weren't interested in ruling over humanity. They wanted to erase them from existence, to make sure that no trace of human civilization would remain to contaminate their perfect galaxy. This wasn't a war for territory or resources. This was a war for survival itself. The transformation of Earth accelerated. In shipyards across the solar system, new vessels took shape. These weren't exploration ships or peaceful traders. They were instruments of war, designed with one purpose: to bring death to humanity's enemies. The ships carried names that reflected their creator's new mindset: vengeance, retribution, wrath, and last stand. Children who had once dreamed of becoming scientists or artists now dreamed of becoming soldiers. Music and literature changed to reflect the single driving force of human civilization: the total destruction of those who had dared to murder their people. Morrison stood one last time in the ruins of Luna Colony 7 before the memorial service. Soon, construction crews would come to build a monument where the research station had been. The inscription would be simple: "Here died the last of peaceful humanity." He touched the cold metal one final time and walked away, leaving behind the species that had once reached for the stars with hope. What emerged from those ruins would reach for the stars with something far more dangerous: the absolute certainty that mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford. Colonel Ryan Martinez walked through the training grounds of Camp Determination on Mars, watching humanity's transformation take physical form. The red desert stretched endlessly in every direction, but the soldiers training here weren't concerned with the hostile environment. They had been changed, enhanced, made into something that could survive in any conditions the galaxy might throw at them. These weren't the same humans who had lived peacefully among the stars just 6 months ago. These were weapons forged from grief and tempered in rage. The volunteers came from every human world, but they all shared one thing in common. Each had lost someone at Luna Colony 7, or in the smaller attacks that followed. Martinez watched. A woman named Rachel lift weights that should have crushed a normal human. Her brother had been a teacher at the colony. A man named Paul ran through obstacle courses at speeds that blurred his movements. His wife and daughter had been visiting the research labs when the aliens came. Every enhanced soldier carried their dead with them, and that weight had been transformed into strength. The genetic modifications were extensive but necessary: faster reflexes, stronger bones, enhanced healing, improved stamina. The soldiers could survive in vacuum for limited periods, fight in gravity wells that would crush ordinary humans, and operate for days without sleep. The cybernetic implants gave them direct neural links to their weapons and equipment, allowing them to react faster than any alien could anticipate. They were still human, but they were human perfected for war. Martinez himself had volunteered for the first round of enhancements after seeing the footage from Luna Colony 7. He remembered watching children running through corridors as alien weapons cut them down, remembered the faces of parents who died trying to protect families that couldn't be saved. The procedures had been painful beyond description, but the pain was nothing compared to the helplessness he had felt watching those recordings. Now he felt no helplessness, only purpose. On Titan Prime, engineer Susan Blake supervised the construction of humanity's new fleet. The industrial world had been transformed into the largest shipyard in human history, its factories running 24 hours a day without stopping. The ships taking shape in the construction bays weren't designed for exploration or scientific research. They existed for one purpose: to deliver death to any species that threatened humanity. Blake watched the final hull plates being installed on the destroyer Retribution and felt a fierce satisfaction. This ship would carry weapons that could crack planets in half. The design philosophy was simple: overwhelming firepower and maximum intimidation. The ships were painted black as space itself, with hull designs that looked more like predators than vehicles. They carried experimental weapons based on Dr. Hayes's quantum disruption research, along with conventional armaments scaled up to sizes that had never been attempted before. Each ship was a message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer interested in peaceful coexistence. Blake had been an architect before the Massacre, designing beautiful buildings for growing human colonies. Now she designed instruments of war, and she found the work equally satisfying. There was a pure honesty in building something whose only purpose was destruction. No pretense, no hidden agendas, no diplomatic double talk. These ships would go into space and kill everything that threatened human survival. It was a simple and perfect solution to a simple and clear problem. Intelligence Officer Danny Cooper moved through the shadows of a Zephyrian supply station, his enhanced body allowing him to navigate ventilation shafts and maintenance corridors without detection. The aliens had never encountered a species capable of this level of stealth and infiltration. They built their stations assuming that other races would announce themselves and follow proper diplomatic protocols. Cooper had no interest in protocols. He was here to gather information and plant quantum disruption charges that would turn this entire facility into expanding gas. What he discovered in the station's data cores was worse than anyone had imagined. The massacre at Luna Colony 7 wasn't random violence or territorial expansion. It was a test. The Zephyrians belonged to something called the Purification Compact, an alliance of species dedicated to preventing what they called viral races from spreading across the galaxy. Humans had been identified as viral because they adapted too quickly, spread too far, and showed too much potential for growth. Cooper read through files that documented dozens of other species that had been eliminated for similar reasons. Races that had developed too fast, explored too aggressively, or shown too much independence. The Compact saw itself as the galaxy's immune system, destroying threats before they could become dangerous. Luna Colony 7 had been their way of testing whether humans would submit to limitations or fight back. The test results were being compiled for transmission to the Compact's core worlds, where plans for complete human extermination were already being prepared. The intelligence officer set his charges carefully throughout the station's power core and life support systems. When they detonated, they would create a quantum cascade that would tear the entire structure apart at the molecular level. More importantly, the explosion would carry a message in the quantum resonance patterns that Dr. Hayes had taught him to encode. The Zephyrians would understand that humans had not only reverse-engineered their technology, but improved upon it. They would know that the test subjects had become predators. Dr. Hayes stood before a massive quantum disruption cannon that stretched across half a mile of underground facility. The weapon represented months of sleepless work and dangerous experimentation. 3 of his research team had died in the early tests when containment fields failed, and reality itself had begun to unravel around the laboratory. Hayes had ordered their bodies cremated and their ashes mixed into the weapon's focusing crystals. They had become part of humanity's revenge in the most literal sense possible. The first full-scale test used a captured Zephyrian cruiser as a target. The alien ship hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit, held in place by gravity anchors while human observation vessels watched from a safe distance. Hayes activated the quantum disruption cannon and watched reality tear itself apart around the target. The Zephyrian ship didn't just explode or vaporize. It ceased to exist on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously, leaving a sphere of twisted spacetime that would remain unstable for decades. The power readings exceeded every projection. The weapon had reached into the fundamental structure of the universe and ripped it apart like tissue paper. Hayes realized that humanity had developed something that went beyond conventional warfare. This was the power to unmake creation itself. He thought about the children who had died at Luna Colony 7 and felt no moral concerns about wielding such destructive force. The galaxy had chosen to test humanity's resolve. Now they would learn what that resolve could accomplish. As the months passed, human society completed its transformation. Art and literature reflected the new reality, with stories of heroes who showed no mercy to alien enemies and songs that celebrated the coming war. Children learned to handle weapons alongside their alphabet, and teenagers competed for early admission to military enhancement programs. The old human values of curiosity and cooperation hadn't disappeared, but they had been focused into a laser-bright beam of pure purpose. Martinez watched his enhanced soldiers training for their first combat deployment and felt pride in what humanity had become. They were no longer the naive species that had sent peaceful greetings into space and hoped for friendship among the stars. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a race that had taken the worst thing that could happen to them and used it as fuel for their own evolution. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach them their place in the galaxy. Instead, they had taught humanity that their place was at the top of the food chain, and they were willing to kill everything else to get there. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Warhammer, watching 200 human warships form into attack formation around her flagship. The fleet stretched across space like a river of death, each vessel painted the color of night and armed with weapons that could reshape reality itself. This wasn't a defensive patrol or a peacekeeping mission. This was humanity's first deliberate act of extermination, carefully planned and executed without mercy or hesitation. The target was Kepler Station, a major Zephyrian military installation that coordinated attacks against non-aligned species throughout this sector. Intelligence reports indicated that over 3 million Zephyrian military personnel were stationed there, along with their families and civilian support staff. Rodriguez felt no concern for the innocent lives that would be lost in the coming battle. The aliens had forfeited any claim to mercy when they murdered the children of Luna Colony 7. Rodriguez opened a channel to every ship in her fleet and spoke words that would echo through human history. She told her captains that they were not just fighting for revenge, though revenge would be sweet. They were fighting to establish a new truth in the galaxy, that humanity could not be threatened, could not be tested, and could not be destroyed, without consequences that would shake the foundations of space itself. Today, the galaxy would learn to fear the mention of human names. Captain Morrison commanded the stealth destroyer Ghostwalker as it slipped through Zephyrian sensor nets like a blade through silk. His ship was designed for hit-and-run attacks, striking without warning and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The quantum disruption weapons mounted in his torpedo tubes were smaller than the massive cannons Dr. Hayes had built, but they were more than sufficient to tear apart supply convoys and communication stations. Morrison watched his tactical display as 3 Zephyrian cargo vessels approached the jump point where his ship waited in silence. The aliens had no idea that death was waiting for them in the empty space between stars. Their ships were painted in bright colors that celebrated their victories over peaceful species, covered with symbols that marked each successful extermination. Morrison targeted the lead vessel and fired a single quantum disruption torpedo. The alien ship disappeared in a cascade of twisted spacetime that spread like a virus to the other vessels in the convoy. Within seconds, all 3 ships had been erased from existence, their crews and cargo scattered across dimensions that human science barely understood. Morrison felt no satisfaction from the quick deaths he had delivered. He would have preferred that the aliens suffer as the colonists had suffered, but efficiency was more important than personal revenge. The Ghostwalker moved on to its next target, leaving behind empty space where the convoy had been. Morrison's ship would strike 17 more times before the main battle began, each attack carefully calculated to maximize terror and confusion among the enemy forces. By the time Admiral Rodriguez arrived with the main fleet, the Zephyrians would already be broken and demoralized, easy prey for the slaughter that was coming. Colonel Martinez led the first wave of enhanced soldiers onto the surface of Kepler 442b, a fortress world that the Zephyrians had turned into their primary military training facility. His troops moved through the alien atmosphere like ghosts, their enhanced biology allowing them to fight in conditions that would kill ordinary humans within minutes. The Zephyrians had chosen this world specifically because its environment was hostile to most species. They had not expected to face enemies who could adapt to anything. The alien defenders fought with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. They used weapons that could boil blood inside veins and armor that could deflect most known energy attacks. Against any other enemy, these advantages might have been decisive. Against humanity's enhanced soldiers, they were barely inconveniences. Martinez watched his troops tear through Zephyrian defensive positions like paper, their cybernetic implants allowing them to coordinate attacks with mechanical precision. The Zephyrians tried to surrender when they realized that their weapons were useless against the human assault. Martinez ignored their attempts at communication. Surrender was a luxury reserved for species that showed mercy to children. These aliens had forfeited any right to quarter when they chose to test humanity's resolve with mass murder. The colonel ordered his soldiers to take no prisoners and leave no survivors. The battle for the fortress world lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every Zephyrian installation had been reduced to smoking rubble, and every alien defender had been killed. Martinez stood in the command center that had once coordinated attacks against peaceful species and felt the cold satisfaction of a job completed properly. The enhanced soldiers under his command had performed flawlessly, showing no hesitation and no mercy. Humanity had been transformed into the perfect predator, and today the galaxy had gotten its first taste of what that transformation meant. Lieutenant Commander Chen led her reconnaissance squadron deep into Zephyrian space, using stealth technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels. Her mission was to gather intelligence on enemy fleet movements and identify high-value targets for future attacks. What she discovered changed the nature of humanity's war from simple revenge to a fight for survival against forces that spanned the galaxy. The Zephyrians were not acting alone. They were part of a massive alliance called the Purification Compact that included dozens of species from across the galaxy. Chen watched from concealment as alien fleets gathered in numbers that dwarfed anything humanity could field. Their ships representing technologies and combat doctrines from civilizations that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. The Massacre at Luna Colony 7 had not been a local decision made by one aggressive species. It had been approved by a galactic government that viewed humanity as a cancer to be surgically removed. More disturbing was the intelligence Chen gathered about the Compact's long-term plans. They had already identified every human world and calculated the exact force requirements needed to sterilize each planet. The attack on Luna Colony 7 was just the beginning of a campaign that would systematically eliminate human civilization across hundreds of star systems. The aliens were not interested in conquest or subjugation. They wanted complete extinction, carried out with the methodical precision of a medical procedure. Chen transmitted her findings back to Admiral Rodriguez and felt a grim satisfaction as she watched the Admiral's face change on the communication screen. The knowledge that humanity faced odds of thousands to 1 didn't intimidate the fleet commander. Instead, it seemed to energize her. Rodriguez smiled with the expression of a predator that had just located a target-rich environment and began issuing orders for an escalation in human military production. Dr. Hayes activated his quantum disruption weapons in combat for the first time during the assault on Kepler Station. The massive installation had been built inside a hollow asteroid, its defensive systems designed to withstand conventional attacks from entire fleets. Hayes targeted the asteroid's core with a sustained burst from his reality-warping cannon and watched physical matter cease to exist on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. The destruction spread outward from the point of impact like a disease, unmaking everything it touched at the most fundamental level of existence. Zephyrian. Ships that tried to evacuate the station were caught in the expanding zone of quantum collapse and simply stopped existing. The asteroid itself folded in on dimensions that normal space couldn't contain, creating a permanent scar in the fabric of reality that would remain visible for thousands of years. Hayes watched the total annihilation of Kepler Station and felt the cold satisfaction of a scientist whose theory had been proven correct under field conditions. The quantum disruption technology was more effective than even his most optimistic projections had suggested. A single sustained burst could eliminate targets the size of small moons, and the psychological effect on enemy forces was devastating. The Zephyrians were learning that humanity had developed weapons that operated beyond their understanding of physical law. As news of the victory spread throughout human space, citizens gathered in public squares to watch recordings of the battle. They saw their transformed military forces tear through alien defenses like they were made of paper. They watched enemy installations vanish in cascades of twisted space-time that left nothing but empty coordinates where cities had once stood. For the first time since the massacre at Luna Colony 7, humanity smiled. The psychological warfare campaign began immediately. Human forces broadcast footage of their victories across every alien communication network they could access. The EO message was simple and clear. This was what happened to species that threatened human survival. The recording showed Zephyrian soldiers fleeing in panic, alien ships exploding in displays of impossible physics, and entire military installations being erased from existence. The galaxy was being taught to fear the mention of human names. Admiral Rodriguez reviewed the battle reports and felt the satisfaction of a teacher whose students had exceeded every expectation. Humanity had been tested by the galaxy and had responded by becoming something the universe had never seen before. Intelligence Officer Cooper moved through the deepest levels of the Purification Compact's central command facility, his enhanced body allowing him to navigate security systems that had never been designed to stop human infiltrators. The massive space station hung in the void between galaxies, hidden in the gravitational shadow of a black hole where no sane species would think to look. Cooper had spent 3 months getting here, traveling through alien territories that were supposed to be impossible for humans to survive. The intelligence he gathered changed everything humanity thought they knew about their situation. The Purification Compact wasn't just an alliance of aggressive species looking to eliminate competition. It was a galactic government that had existed for over 50,000 years, dedicated to maintaining what they called cosmic stability. They viewed themselves as the immune system of the universe, designed to identify and eliminate any species that showed potential for unlimited growth. Cooper accessed data files that documented hundreds of civilizations that had been systematically exterminated over the millennia. Races that had developed too quickly, explored too aggressively, or shown too much independence from established galactic order. The Compact had refined genocide into a precise science, with detailed protocols for identifying threats and eliminating them before they could become dangerous. Humanity had been marked for extinction not because of anything they had done, but because of what they might become. The files revealed that Luna Colony 7 had been carefully chosen as a target. The Compact had studied human psychology for decades, analyzing captured communications and cultural artifacts to understand how humans would respond to deliberate provocation. They had expected humanity to either submit to superior force or launch ineffective revenge attacks that could be easily crushed. They had never anticipated that humans would respond by becoming something entirely new. Cooper planted quantum disruption charges throughout the command facility while he downloaded every piece of intelligence he could access. The charges were keyed to his own genetic signature, ensuring that they would detonate only after he had safely escaped. When they activated, they would create a cascade reaction that would tear the entire station apart at the molecular level, taking with it the Compact's central command structure and 50,000 years of carefully accumulated knowledge. Admiral Rodriguez authorized Operation Cleansing Fire from the bridge of her new flagship, the UES Annihilator, a vessel so heavily armed that its weapon systems required their own quantum reactors to function. The human fleet had grown to over 800 ships, each one carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. They were accompanied by a new class of vessels that existed purely to spread terror. The Nightmare ships, painted with images of human children who had died at Luna Colony 7, and equipped with speakers that broadcast the screams of dying aliens across enemy communication networks. The operation's target was the Compact's core territories, a cluster of star systems that had never seen warfare because they were protected by defensive installations built over thousands of years. Rodriguez intended to demonstrate that no defense could protect species that had made themselves humanity's enemies. The quantum disruption weapons her ships carried were powerful enough to tear holes in space itself, creating permanent scars in reality that would remind the galaxy of human vengeance for millennia to come. Rodriguez opened communications with every human ship in the fleet and spoke the words that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She told her crews that they were not just fighting a war, they were rewriting the fundamental laws that governed civilized behavior among the stars. The old rules said that species should coexist peacefully and resolve conflicts through diplomacy. The new rules would be written in quantum fire and enforced by human weapons that could unmake reality itself. Captain Morrison led the Suicide Squadron deeper into enemy territory than any human force had ever penetrated. His mission was to plant quantum disruption mines in the heart of the Compact's capital system, devices that would create a sustained reality storm capable of erasing entire planets from existence. The journey required his ships to navigate through space that had been twisted by previous quantum attacks where the normal laws of physics no longer applied consistently. Morrison watched his navigation displays struggle to process sensor data from regions where space itself was damaged. His ship passed through areas where time moved at different speeds and gravity flowed in directions that had no names. The quantum disruption weapons humanity had developed were more powerful than anyone had anticipated, but they came with a price. Each use damaged the fabric of reality itself, creating scars that would never heal. The captain thought about the children of Luna Colony 7 as his ship approached the Compact's capital world. Billions of aliens lived on the planet below, most of them civilians who had never participated in the decision to exterminate humanity. Morrison felt no sympathy for them. They belonged to a civilization that had made genocide into official policy, and they would share the fate they had planned for human children. He activated the quantum mines and watched them disappear into the planet's crust, where they would detonate in precisely 72 hours. Colonel Martinez commanded the ground assault on the Compact's military headquarters, a fortress world that had been turned into the ultimate defensive position over thousands of years of careful construction. His enhanced soldiers faced enemies from dozens of different species, each with unique abilities and technologies that had been perfected over millennia of warfare. The aliens had advantages that should have made them unbeatable: telepathic coordination, energy weapons that could phase through most armor, and defensive systems that adapted to any attack. Martinez watched his soldiers tear through the alien defenses like they were made of paper and felt fierce pride in what humanity had become. The enhancements they had received weren't just physical modifications. They had been transformed psychologically as well, their capacity for mercy and hesitation surgically removed and replaced with perfect focus on the destruction of their enemies. They fought with mechanical precision and absolute ruthlessness, showing no reaction to alien surrender attempts or civilian casualties. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Compact's military command structure. Martinez stood in the central command room where alien generals had planned the extinction of human civilization and felt the cold satisfaction of a job completed properly. His soldiers had performed flawlessly, adapting to every defensive system. The aliens could deploy and overcoming advantages that should have been insurmountable. Humanity had become the perfect predator, and the galaxy was learning what that meant. Dr. Hayes made a disturbing discovery during his analysis of quantum disruption weapon effects. The technology was more powerful than even his most optimistic projections had suggested, but it came with consequences that threatened the very fabric of space-time itself. Each weapon discharge created permanent damage to reality, scars that were spreading outward from the points of impact and affecting areas far from the original targets. Hayes studied sensor readings from regions where quantum disruption weapons had been used extensively and realized that the damage was cumulative. Space itself was becoming unstable in areas around human battle zones, with gravitational anomalies and temporal distortions that grew stronger with each passing day. If the weapons continued to be used at current levels, they could eventually destabilize entire star systems, potentially including Earth itself. The scientist faced a moral dilemma that cut to the heart of humanity's transformation. The quantum disruption weapons were devastatingly effective against alien enemies, but they were also damaging the universe in ways that might eventually threaten human survival. Hayes realized that humanity had developed the power to win their war against the Purification Compact, but using that power might ultimately destroy everything they were fighting to protect. Engineer Blake worked around the clock to complete humanity's ultimate weapon, the Omega Generator, a device capable of creating controlled quantum cascades that could sterilize entire sectors of space. The weapon represented the final evolution of human warfare technology, the power to literally unmake creation itself on a scale that dwarfed anything previously imagined. Blake understood that building such a device crossed moral lines that no species had ever approached, but she also understood that humanity was fighting for its very existence. The Omega Generator required resources from across human space and manufacturing techniques that pushed industrial technology to its absolute limits. Blake coordinated construction efforts on dozens of worlds, each producing components that were so dangerous they had to be assembled in specially shielded facilities located in empty space, far from any inhabited planets. The final device was the size of a small moon, and required its own fleet of support vessels to transport and deploy. Blake stood before the completed weapon, and felt both pride and terror at what humanity had accomplished. The Omega Generator represented everything their species had become: brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely dedicated to the destruction of their enemies regardless of the cost. The final battle took place in the Nexus system, where the Purification Compact had gathered the combined fleets of 30 species for one last desperate stand against humanity. Admiral Rodriguez commanded a human armada that had grown to over 1,500 ships, each one a testament to humanity's complete transformation from peaceful explorers to the galaxy's ultimate predators. The alien fleet outnumbered them 10-1, but numbers had become irrelevant in the face of quantum disruption technology that could rewrite the laws of physics. Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Omega, a vessel so massive that it required its own gravitational field generators to maintain structural integrity. The ship's primary weapon was a quantum disruption cannon that could tear holes in space large enough to swallow entire fleets. Around her, the human armada spread across space like a plague of death, each ship painted black as the void and armed, with weapons that operated beyond alien understanding of physical law. The Admiral opened a communication channel to every human ship and spoke words that would echo through galactic history. She told her forces that they were not just fighting for revenge or survival, but for the right to define what civilization meant among the stars. The old definition had allowed for species that committed genocide against children. The new definition would be written in quantum fire and enforced by human weapons that could unmake reality itself. Captain Morrison led the opening assault with coordinated quantum disruption strikes that shattered the enemy's formation before the main battle could begin. His tactics had evolved beyond conventional warfare into something approaching art, using reality-warping weapons to create spatial anomalies that trapped enemy fleets in dimensional pockets where they could be destroyed at leisure. Morrison watched alien ships disappear into twisted folds of space-time and felt the cold satisfaction of a predator that had perfected its killing techniques. The compact forces tried to respond with conventional tactics, launching massive coordinated attacks designed to overwhelm human defenses through sheer weight of numbers. Their strategy might have worked against any other enemy, but humanity was no longer bound by conventional military thinking. Human ships didn't just fight the alien fleets. They rewrote the rules of engagement on a moment-by-moment basis, using quantum disruption technology to create localized physics that favored human weapons and neutralized alien advantages. Morrison's squadron destroyed over 300 enemy vessels in the first hour of combat, each kill accomplished with surgical precision that wasted no ammunition and left no survivors. The human ships moved through the battle zone like ghosts, appearing from folded space to deliver killing strikes and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could manipulate reality itself as a weapon. Colonel Martinez led his enhanced soldiers in boarding actions against the largest compact command ships, turning the alien vessels into charnel houses as his troops moved through corridors that had never known defeat. The enhanced humans fought with mechanical precision and absolute ruthlessness, their cybernetic implants allowing them to coordinate attacks with inhuman efficiency, while their psychological modifications eliminated any capacity for mercy or hesitation. The alien defenders fought desperately, using weapons and tactics that had been perfected over millennia of galactic warfare. They deployed energy shields that could stop most known weapons, combat armor that adapted to different attack patterns, and coordinated defense systems that should have been impossible for any boarding force to overcome. Against Martinez's enhanced soldiers, these advantages proved useless. The humans moved through alien defenses like death itself given form, unstoppable and utterly without mercy. Martinez personally confronted Admiral Zek Thule, the Zephyrian commander who had ordered the massacre at Luna Colony 7. The alien tried to justify his actions, speaking of galactic stability and the necessity of preventing viral species from spreading chaos through civilized space. Martinez listened to the alien's words and felt nothing but cold contempt for a species that could murder children and call it policy. He killed the admiral slowly, ensuring that the Zephyrian understood exactly what human children had felt as they died. The compact revealed their final gambit when Dr. Hayes detected massive energy signatures from the center of their fleet formation. The aliens had developed a biological weapon specifically designed to target human DNA, a virus that would spread across all human worlds simultaneously and ensure complete extinction within weeks. The revelation that they had planned genocide from the very beginning removed any remaining constraints on human military action. Hayes realized that the alien virus represented everything wrong with the galaxy's approach to civilization. Rather than accepting diversity and competition, the established powers preferred to eliminate anything that challenged their dominance. The virus was not a weapon of war but an instrument of cosmic sterilization, designed to ensure that the galaxy would never change or grow beyond the limits imposed by ancient species that feared progress. The scientist made a decision that would reshape the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Instead of using conventional weapons against the virus deployment ships, Hayes activated the Omega generator, targeting not the enemy fleet but the quantum structure of space itself around the Nexus system. The weapon tore open reality on a scale that had never been attempted, creating a permanent barrier that trapped both human and alien forces in a pocket dimension where the final chapter of the war could be written without affecting the broader universe. Inside the pocket dimension, the laws of physics operated according to human preferences rather than universal constants. Gravity flowed in directions that favored human ship designs. Energy behaved in ways that enhanced human weapons while disrupting alien technology, and time itself moved at rates that gave human forces tactical advantages their enemies couldn't counter. The Omega generator had created a private universe where humanity could finish their war without restraint. The battle's outcome was inevitable once the physical laws themselves had been rewritten to favor human victory. Admiral Rodriguez watched the complete destruction of the Purification Compact's combined fleets with the satisfaction of a teacher whose students had exceeded every possible expectation. The aliens had tested humanity's resolve and discovered that humans had no limits, only targets. Every enemy ship was destroyed, every alien crew killed, and every trace of the Compact's 50,000-year civilization erased from existence. As the pocket dimension collapsed around them, the surviving human ships emerged into normal space, carrying recordings of their total victory. The footage was broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy, ensuring that every species would understand the new reality. Humanity was no longer a peaceful race reaching for the stars. With hope and wonder, they had become evolution's answer to extinction, perfectly adapted for a universe that had proven itself hostile to their existence. Admiral Rodriguez, now bearing the title Supreme War Master of Humanity, established the new galactic order from her command ship positioned at the edge of former compact space. The rules were simple and absolute. Human space was inviolate, human citizens were untouchable, and any species that threatened humanity in any way would face the same fate as the Purification Compact. There would be no negotiations, no diplomatic solutions, and no second chances. Other species throughout the galaxy received the message and understood its implications immediately. Trade routes were abandoned when human ships appeared on sensor screens. Entire civilizations relocated to distant sectors to avoid any possibility of contact with humanity. The galaxy had learned to fear the mention of human names, understanding that the peaceful explorers who had once sent greeting messages into space had been replaced by something far more dangerous. A new generation of human children grew up in this transformed galaxy, learning from birth that their species had survived by becoming the ultimate predator. They studied the history of Luna Colony 7 not as a tragedy, but as the catalyst that had revealed humanity's true potential. They learned that mercy was a luxury their species could not afford, and that the galaxy respected only strength applied, without hesitation or restraint. Captain Morrison, now an old man with cybernetic enhancements that had kept him functional far beyond normal human lifespan, stood before the memorial to Luna Colony 7 that had been constructed in orbit around Earth. The monument was a perfect replica of the destroyed research station, preserved exactly as it had appeared in the final moments before the Zephyrian attack. 50,000 names were inscribed on walls that would never again echo with the voices of the dead. Morrison read the inscription that had been placed at the memorial's center and felt the satisfaction of a promise fulfilled. The words were simple but carried the weight of galactic transformation. Here died the last of peaceful humanity. What rose from these ashes fears nothing, forgives nothing, and forgets nothing. Let the galaxy tremble at what it has created. Old Captain touched the memorial wall one final time and walked away, leaving behind the monument to humanity's innocence.